Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unlock what just might be one of the absolute most misunderstood cognitive superpowers out there. You know, if you or someone you love has ADHD, you've probably heard a ton of messaging your whole life about what the ADHD brain supposedly cannot do. But today, we are flipping that script entirely. We're going to explore the pinch framework. This is a truly powerful, transformative psychological tool, and it's designed specifically to help individuals with ADHD master and harness their focus in some pretty incredible, highly productive ways. We're going to look at how the brain actually works, rather than, how society wished it worked. Okay, let's dive into this. For decades now, society, schools, workplaces, they've all basically operated on this assumption that an inability to just sit still, stare at a totally tedious spreadsheet, and grind through a task is simply a failure of willpower. But is a lack of focus really a character flaw? I mean, we've attached so much unnecessary stigma to distraction, treating it like a moral failing, right? Like it's a sign of laziness or a lack of discipline. But the actual science and the psychological framework we're analyzing today, well, it tells a completely different and honestly, an incredibly empowering story.
What's really interesting about this slide is the sheer contrast. Over on the left, you've got that old, tired, and quite frankly, damaging view, distraction as a character flaw. But the new paradigm is a massive, fundamental perspective shift. It's not a lack of focus. It is a neurological requirement. Think about that. The ADHD brain isn't broken. It simply has a uniquely tuned operating system. It actively requires specific types of stimulation to get into gear. So it's not that you're incapable of focusing, it's that your specific neurological wiring literally demands a very different kind of fuel to ignite that focus and actually sustain it.
Section 1. The High Achiever Blueprint. Let's transition into exploring how some of the most successful people actually utilize this exact neurological requirement.
Take legendary high achievers like Sachin Tendulkar and Ratan Tata. They didn't achieve world-class greatness by forcing themselves into some rigid, neurotypical box. Tendulkar, for instance, didn't just vaguely focus on cricket. He found the challenge of the sport so endlessly stimulating that it triggered intense hyperfocus. It famously allowed him to block out the deafening roar of entire stadiums. And Ratan Tata, he built a global empire, not by merely grinding through boring spreadsheets, but by constantly chasing the novelty and the challenge of massive, highly complex business puzzles. They leaned heavily into what naturally stimulated their highly active minds. They stand as actual proof that standard, slow-burn focus isn't the only path to greatness. Their cognitive styles show us that distraction, when it's channeled correctly, is really just the flip side of immense, highly productive energy.
So the crucial point is the ultimate reward of this cognitive style is hyperfocus. It's about intentionally triggering a state of intense concentration, rather than just passively waiting for some panic-inducing deadline to force your hand. It's that magical state where time just melts away, the outside world fades out, and you are entirely, intensely consumed by the task at hand. The real tragedy for a lot of folks is that they wait for sheer panic, like a massive project due tomorrow morning, to accidentally trigger this state. But our blueprint shows that this can be a manageable, aspirational state that you can actually control.
Section 2. Decoding the Pinch Framework. Let's introduce the core manual for achieving this aspirational state.
And this brilliantly illustrates where the magic actually happens. The PINCH acronym. Forget the absurdity of neurotypical office expectations where everyone is somehow supposed to just sit and stare blankly at a screen for 8 uninterrupted hours. These are the 5 specific triggers that actually stimulate motivation in brains that typically struggle with standard mundane tasks. P is for passion. Does this connect to something you deeply care about? I is for interest. Is there a fascinating angle to this work? N is for novelty. What's new, shiny, or different about this specific approach? C is for challenge. Is it hard enough to feel like a game or a complex puzzle to solve? And finally, the H aligns with urgency. When you have an ADHD brain, a task desperately needs to hit at least one, if not a combination of these exact triggers. If a task lacks passion, interest, novelty, challenge, and urgency, a differently wired brain doesn't just find it boring, it literally refuses to engage. Section 3. Triggering your hyperfocus. Now that we have the theory, how can you actually use these triggers in practical terms? All right, here is your practical strategy for literally turning distraction into unparalleled productivity. First, leverage personal excitement. This means you have to intentionally manufacture passion, interest, novelty, or challenge. Say you've got a boring report to write. How can you gamify it?
Boom, that's a challenge. Can you write it in a totally new, stimulating environment, like a busy cafe you've never been to before? That's novelty. You are actively tricking your brain into engagement by providing the exact neurological stimulation it craves. Next up, leverage deadlines by creating artificial micro-deadlines for yourself today, which perfectly taps into urgency. Don't wait for an external deadline that's 3 weeks away. By intentionally injecting these pinch elements into your most mundane tasks, you provide your brain with the precise fuel it needs to lock in and enter that hyper-focus state.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to really ponder today. How will you manufacture urgency or excitement in your next mundane task? Think about that one tedious thing you've been putting off all week long. How can you apply the pinch framework right now to transform it into a challenge, introduce a bit of novelty, or create an urgent mission out of it? Remember, you do not have a broken attention span. You have a highly specialized cognitive engine that simply requires a specific type of fuel. I highly encourage you to go out and test this neuro-affirming superpower in your own life today. Just see what incredible things you can achieve when you finally stop fighting your brain's natural wiring and start working brilliantly alongside it.